Okay, so the urushi has sat overnight. I've got it here. Nothing is really significantly dried out because we got it nice and sealed with the plastic wrap, kind of touching the surface there. So hooray for that. I'm going to take it out, kind of mix it around again to let it, grind up all those little particulates of iron as small as possible and kind of let them join the urushi. And after we do that, we're going to filter it and put it in a tube. So, put on my mask and go ahead and get started. By the way, it's morning in cold northern Japan, and here we don't have central heating. We heat each room as necessary, so it's still cold here. That's why I'm wearing a hat and a suit. Alright, so we'll start here. You can see there's a lot of extra urushi on the plastic wrap. I really like to salvage everything that I can. Urushi is something that comes from the urushi tree. It's literally the sap of a tree. And make kind of small cuts on the tree and scrape it out drop by drop. So it's something that's harvested very carefully. And it's also expensive for good stuff, of course. Japanese urushi costs something like $50 for 50 grams. It's almost $1 a gram. So you really want to avoid wasting it. Especially because the trees worked so hard to make it just bit by bit. So I kind of salvage every bit that I can. Behind me, you see my mural is where I dry it or cure the urushi in my shakuhachi and that kind of thing. This is a kind of a special box. Anyway, I like to decorate the inside top of the lid with the extra urushi that I can't really get off of anything, right? So sometimes I'll just go ahead and wipe it on here and make myself a nice design on top of the lid. And that actually helps the effect of sealing the wood too, so it kind of gives it a moisture-proof seal. That way I feel like I haven't completely wasted the remnants of urushi that I haven't been able to get off of there. And you can see it's had a long history of having urushi wiped on it. There we go. And now we'll continue. Alright, so here I'm using just kind of a wooden pestle now. The urushi has been mixed in, so it's not so thick anymore. It's a little bit thinner, so I can't use the hammer realistically, but this I can use to kind of grind it around and make sure all those little tiny particulates are ground up and worked into the urushi as much as possible. And again, there's not just a single way of doing this. There are probably more efficient ways if you use a larger block of wood or whatever, but this time this is how I'm doing it. We're going to do this for a good amount of time. So just another comment. As for the urushi you use, using Japanese urushi makes a big difference. Because of the soil content in Japan, the actual content of urushiol, which determines the strength of the urushi when it's dried, is very different from what you'll find in China. It's not that the Chinese stuff is bad, it's just that it's a kind of different chemical composition. So if you buy the Japanese urushi, which is about 5 times more expensive, it'll give you a shinier finish and also a much harder finish, much more durable too. So one way to compromise with this, if you can't afford to use all Japanese urushi, is you can use Chinese urushi for combining, right? For mixing it in. And then before you use it, add about 1 part Shu-iro urushi and 1 part or 1/2 part Japanese urushi. Sometimes I like to add a little bit of kishomi urushi. That is the just basically raw urushi as it is. It hasn't had the excess water removed like this has to make it translucent. But I like my finished product sometimes to be kind of darker. And when I put the kishomi urushi, that means Japanese urushi, mix a little bit of that in, and it gives a nice kind of deeper, darker, and also harder and shinier finish, which I like. Alright, now we're going to put this back in our bowl and get it ready for filtering. In the meantime, we're going to clean everything off of this little pestle that we can. So this is a koshi-ki. It's a kind of filtering machine. You can probably buy them, but it's easier and cheaper if you just make one yourself. I think they're pretty simple to make. I just have a board here, put 2 slats in and kind of, dug out a hole for them, glued them in here, drilled a hole here and made a little device that can turn around. There's a hole here for the string, and then this end has a slot in it. And over that fits this guy. You can see the top is painted kind of nicely there. And that keeps the paper in. So I'm going to filter the urushi, and I'm going to show you how I do that. This is koshi-gami. It's a very thin tissue paper-like substance, but it doesn't let any of the fibers of the paper go into the urushi. I really want to filter this well, so I'm going to filter it through, let's see, maybe I want to use 2 pieces of paper, don't I? So I have 2 of these Urushi filtering papers, and I'm going to, there we go, put both of them, one on top of the other. I'm going to double them up so that I have basically 4 layers to filter the Urushi through. And I'm just going to tear off this excess portion here. So I've got 4 layers, and by the way, if you want help finding these things like koshi-gami or urushi or anything like that, there's lots of suppliers in Japan that will ship abroad. If you need help finding supplies, feel free to send me, just leave a comment in the comment section, or send me a mail or through my website, www.hon-on.com, HON-ON.com. There's a contact form there. If you send me an email or something through that, I can help you out as much as I can with that kind of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and do the filtering process now. So you can see the urushi is starting to kind of come through the paper, right? With this kind of bengara urushi, really don't want any of the thicker particles to seep through. So whereas a lot of times with some of the other pigments you might spend more time, put a little bit more pressure on it to get out of there. In this case, I'm not going to do that so much. I'm really going to kind of let it take its time coming out because I don't want to force any of the larger particles through the paper. And you can see I'm using my spatula to kind of coax everything and scrape it off the surface as it comes out. So while this is taking its time dripping down, I'm going to start storing the urushi that is filtered in these tubes so it'll be ready to use. I have these kind of aluminum 20 milliliter paint tubes. You can see they're open at the back end. So you just put the paint, or urushi in this case, inside there, and once it's full, you crimp the end and you've got it stored and basically airtight and ready for being used. So I'm just going to use my spatula here to kind of scoop this in slowly. And I'll probably drip a little bit down the edge too. I'm just not going to really worry about that too much right now. Okay, so at this point, I'm not going to turn this any tighter. However, I will let it sit for a spell and kind of continue to scrape off anything that I can from it. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to have a little bit under 20 grams, maybe 15 to 18 grams of bengara urushi to use. So if you remember, I started out with about 25 grams of urushi, and now I've got about, let's say 18. Inevitably, you lose some urushi to the koshi-gami, to the filtering paper, to the surface of your workspace, to any place where you have to transfer the urushi to another container and that kind of thing. So I try to keep that as little as possible. A rubber spatula, I'm realizing, would really probably be a big help in that area. I'll have to invest in one of those sometime soon. But you lose some and you can't help it. And again, this time I used a little bit of a thicker mixture. I did about 3 to 1, 3 parts urushi to 1 part bengara. If you're using regular pigment, you would use almost closer to a 1 to 1 mixture, but with bengara, the ideal is probably 4 to 1. However, in this case, I'm going to thin it out with kishomi urushi when I actually use it, so I wanted to make it a little bit thicker at this stage. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and wait for that for a little while, then I'll be back. Alright, so there we have it. Everything's finished, cleaned up all the tools, scraped the remaining urushi into the tube. And all that's left to do is to crimp the tube closed. So I'm going to close it from the bottom here Being careful not to let any air slip in there. There you go. Alright, now I'm going to crimp it from the end to try to make sure that as much urushi as possible actually stays inside. I'm using needle nose pliers here for this. Give it a good squeeze. There we go, there's the initial fold and crimp. I'm going to do that 1 or 2 more times since I have the room to. Thank you. A little more for good measure. Alright, so now, there it is. I've got a tube of bengara urushi ready to be used whenever I need it. So hooray for that. I guess that's all. I'm going to clean off my pliers too because I don't want to leave that urushi on there, right? Anyway, like I said, if you have any questions or if you need help getting materials, feel free to drop me a line, okay? And I'll do what I can to help out. And also, if you're a professional urushi person and have noticed any grave mistakes or errors that I've made, feel free to enlighten me, okay? See ya.